They told you that being alone was a curse, that isolation was a punishment, that empty rooms and silence were something to fear. They lied. What if the very thing you've been running from, loneliness, the quiet that follows you like a shadow, isn't a weakness, but your secret weapon? What if solitude isn't a wound to heal, but a forge where your mind sharpens into something dangerous, something rare? What if every hour spent alone is a rehearsal for power you never imagined? Before we dive deeper, take a moment. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet. I promise this isn't just another video. What you're about to hear will change how you see yourself in ways society doesn't want you to understand. Stay with me, because the truths buried here are the ones most people never discover. Niccolò Machiavelli spent decades watching men rise and fall in Renaissance Italy. He studied kings, princes, and merchants, men who commanded armies, built empires, and manipulated entire nations. And through it all, he noticed something most people never talk about. The men who held real power, the ones who endured, weren't those surrounded by allies or flattered by friends. They were the ones who knew how to be alone and not just survive it, but harness it. Society doesn't want you to discover this. There's a reason you're told that isolation is dangerous, that you need a network, that you need approval, that you need to belong, because someone who can stand alone cannot be controlled. Today, I'm going to take you inside that forbidden understanding. What Machiavelli, Schopenhauer, and Nietzsche all recognized about solitude. The kind of solitude that doesn't just break you, but builds you. By the end of this video, you will see your loneliness not as a deficit, but as a strategic advantage so profound that most people will never be psychologically equipped to wield it. But make no mistake, once you see this, there's no going back to the comfortable lie that constant connection is always good and solitude is always bad. In law, 18 of the 48 laws of power, Robert Greene presents a principle that seems almost contradictory at first. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous, he says. Look closer. Greene isn't condemning solitude. He's condemning fear-based isolation, the fortress built from weakness, not strength. The distinction is everything. Strategic withdrawal versus terrified retreat. A prince who builds walls because he fears enemies buries himself alive. Louis XVI hid behind Versailles while France starved, surrounded by sycophants, cut off from reality. He thought walls would protect him. They didn't. They became his coffin. Contrast that with a different kind of solitude. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations alone in a military tent amidst war and death. Machiavelli wrote The Prince in exile, stripped of everything, rejected, surrounded by enemies. He wasn't hiding. He was refining his mind into a weapon. Machiavelli wrote from clarity, from fury, from a place where nothing remained to cloud his perception. That is the difference. The weak build fortresses to escape the world. The strong build laboratories to understand it. Ask yourself, what are you building in your isolation? From childhood, we're conditioned to fear being alone. Every story reinforces it. The lone wolf is evil. The sheep that strays gets eaten. The hero is never without allies. It's a subtle form of control. Societies require compliance. Economies depend on consumption. Both thrive on your need for external approval, your dependence on constant social validation. If you are comfortable alone, you stop buying to impress, stop performing for attention, stop being a cog in the machinery. You begin to exist on your own terms, and that terrifies people. Arthur Schopenhauer saw this clearly centuries ago. He wrote that those who genuinely enjoy solitude possess a rare self-sufficiency, a mind complete unto itself, and society cannot have that. A self-sufficient person is an economic anomaly, an emotional outlier, a threat to systems built on manufactured need. So they pathologize it. They label it anxiety, avoidant behavior, social withdrawal. They try to turn independence into shame. But ask yourself, is your loneliness real pain? Or is it the fear society has planted in you? Who profits if you believe being alone is wrong? History shows us the power hidden in solitude. Nietzsche wrote, "Thus spoke Zarathustra in isolation so deep, most would have gone mad." Newton, quarantined, invented calculus. Darwin, alone on his estate, developed the theory of evolution. Kafka, in the silent nights of his room, produced literature that would haunt the century. They didn't create despite being alone. They created because of it. The crowd, on the other hand, produces nothing original. The crowd reacts, imitates, borrows. Creation requires the quiet, the absence of distraction. Alone, your mind sheds the echo of others. You hear yourself, possibly for the first time in decades. That's where power begins. Machiavelli observed that princes who could not stand alone failed every time. Dependence invites exploitation. When people know you need them, they test you, push boundaries, treat you as an option, not a priority. Thus is universal. Friendships, love, business. Fear of being alone keeps you trapped in relationships that diminish you. But here is the liberation. Learning to stand alone strengthens every connection you have. Walk away when you need to. Stop negotiating from weakness. Stop tolerating crumbs. Stop performing for attention. You become magnetic. Annalee Rufus in Party of One shows that those comfortable in solitude attract the deepest connections, not grasping, not performing, just present. Presence becomes gravity. Neediness repels, self-sufficiency draws in. And this is the first lesson: strategic retreat. When losing ground, amateurs chase harder, overcompensate, erode their position. The Machiavellian retreats, not angrily, not dramatically. They fade strategically, less visible, less eager. Machiavelli, exiled in 1512, did not beg, did not grovel, did not protest. He withdrew, focused, wrote, and emerged stronger than anyone who had opposed him. Retreat reclaims your attention, restores perspective, triggers scarcity in human psychology. People value what becomes rare, but only if your retreat is authentic. Pretending while mentally enslaved is useless. Real withdrawal demands genuine focus on your work, your growth, your empire. The harder the challenge, the stronger the filter, separating the ones who act from the ones who only understand. Schopenhauer described solitude as intellectual wealth, a self that doesn't need external stimulation, a mind fascinated with itself. This independence terrifies those who rely on the group. Your presence alone exposes them, a mirror to their emptiness. The crowd hates those who walk alone, not for fear of harm, but because your solitude challenges their way of life. Each moment content in your own company indicts their desperate social performance. Skip a party, ignore gossip, refuse approval. They will mock, pathologize, label you antisocial or weird. Let them. Their judgment is irrelevant to someone who no longer needs the flock. Susan Cain, in Quiet, documented this. Western culture celebrates extroversion, attention, gregariousness, talk. The quiet, the contemplative, the solitary are treated as broken. Yet Einstein, Wittgenstein, Dickinson all produced legacies in isolation. The crowd makes noise, the individual makes history. Now let's go deeper. This is where most people get stuck. Solitude isn't just being physically alone, it's a deliberate mental discipline. It's an active choice to step outside the chaos, not a passive surrender. And those who master it undergo a transformation I call the transmutation. The loneliness you feel, the silence that gnaws at you, can be turned into raw power. Most never complete this because they medicate the void with distractions, scrolling, swiping, endless noise. They cannot sit with themselves. But you are still here. That means you're ready to confront the truth. Step 1 is acknowledgement. Stop pathologizing your solitude. Stop treating it like a problem to fix or a flaw to hide. Solitude isn't a symptom, it's material. Every hour alone is a moment uncontaminated by other people's opinions, expectations, and projections. That is rare. Most people live decades without ever experiencing one day of true psychological independence. Their thoughts are borrowed, their preferences constructed, their identity patched together from fragments they never examined. You, in your isolation, have a treasure they cannot touch, a direct, unfiltered relationship with your own mind. Step 2 is excavation. Without the distraction of social performance, you begin to encounter parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Fears suppressed, desires denied, shadows you pretended didn't exist. This is uncomfortable. It's where most retreat back into noise. But Machiavelli, Nietzsche, and other great minds understood. The leader who does not know his own weaknesses is destroyed by them. Self-knowledge is strategic. It's not optional. It's survival. And it is only accessible in the dark, in moments when no one else is watching. Step 3 is integration. Take what you discover, your fears, wounds, rage, shameful desires, and make them part of your conscious identity. Stop pretending to be only light. Accept the darkness and you gain power over it. Carl Jung called this shadow work. Machiavelli was doing it centuries earlier. He integrated ruthless realities of human nature that polite society ignores, and because he acknowledged them, he could wield them instead of being controlled by them. Step 4 is construction. Having cleared the debris of conditioning and integrated the hidden self, you now possess something most people never reach: a foundation. From this, you can build deliberately, according to your own rules, your own architecture, not social expectation, not peer pressure, not approval. You become sovereign. Sovereignty doesn't mean ruling others. It means ruling yourself. Your internal kingdom is unshakable because your power doesn't depend on external validation. History gives us examples. Dante Alighieri, exiled from Florence in 1302, lost everything: position, property, home. Most would have broken. Dante used isolation as fuel. The Divine Comedy, one of humanity's greatest literary works, emerged from wandering through hell, purgatory, and paradise alone. His exile wasn't punishment. It was liberation. Were he still entangled in Florence's politics, he'd have been remembered as a minor figure. Solitude freed his genius. Seneca, the Stoic, faced exile under Emperor Nero. He didn't despair. He wrote letters and philosophical works that influenced humanity for millennia. He deliberately practiced solitude because he understood the true prison is dependence on social, material, or emotional circumstances. Isolation, properly approached, is emancipation, not exile. Henry David Thoreau, in 1845, retreated to Walden Pond. Alone for 2 years, he simplified his life to find the essential. What emerged wasn't just a book, it was a philosophy of resistance. Solitude revealed freedom. I never found a companion as companionable as solitude, he wrote. These men were not broken by isolation, they were forged by it. Now, how do you weaponize it? First, structure it. Unstructured isolation devolves into rumination, a destructive loop of repetitive thoughts. Productive solitude requires rituals, writing, studying, training, creating. Machiavelli had rituals in exile, working the farm by day, then donning his formal robes and engaging with ancient masters in study. Ritual maintains identity, even when circumstances attempt to reduce you. Your rituals function the same way. They reinforce your purpose, even without an audience. Second, develop intellectual companionship. Solitude doesn't mean intellectual starvation. Books are conversations across time. Engage with Machiavelli, Marcus Aurelius, Schopenhauer. Let these minds challenge, provoke, and elevate your thought. They are not a replacement for human connection, but a higher form of it, timeless, unassailable, inaccessible to social pressures. Build a library intentionally. Consume ideas deliberately, not passively. Third, document progress. Without external feedback, solitude can feel stagnant. Track your work, your growth, your training. Create tangible evidence of development. When you return to society, you won't need explanations. You'll have results. Solitude transforms into proof. Fourth, practice strategic re-emergence. Solitude is a tool, not a permanent state. The monk retreats to the mountain, but he returns. When you re-enter the world, do it strategically, offering value, not desperation. Your presence, honed in isolation, will be unmistakable. People will notice the difference even if they cannot articulate it. This is a truth that society rarely admits. Some people are meant to walk alone, not forever, not entirely, but fundamentally. They are not broken, they are not incomplete. They are built for conditions others cannot endure. Just as some plants thrive in deserts that would kill a forest tree, your internal architecture is different. No amount of forcing yourself into social molds will change that. Schopenhauer observed that ordinary people measure life by how they spend time. People of intellect measure life by how they use it. Perhaps you aren't lonely, you're simply living differently. But recognize this distinction. There is pathological withdrawal, fear-based hiding, and there is sovereign solitude, the purposeful positioning of someone who has work the crowd cannot comprehend. Which is yours? If you hide from life out of fear, that's a wound to heal. But if you are alone because you've discovered power, creativity, clarity in solitude, you are awakening. Society will pathologize, medicate, or mock this preference. Ignore them. They cannot understand the forge you're building within yourself. Their terror of silence is irrelevant to your preparation. You are alone. Perhaps now, perhaps tonight. Instead of seeing this as a problem, view it as territory to explore, a laboratory, a forge. You are not punished, you are being prepared. Solitude strips away the false, the borrowed, the performed, until only essence remains. From that essence, you will construct a self that needs no external validation, cannot be shaken by rejection, and cannot be manipulated by opinion. Machiavelli wrote, "The prince, not to be liked, but to be true." That truth, unflinching, endured longer than any ruler's reign. Your solitude can produce the same. Not necessarily a book, but a self so integrated, so deliberate, it does not bend to social winds. This is the gift hidden in loneliness. Take it. Let's take it further. Now we enter the stage I call mastery, the deliberate transformation of isolation into sovereignty. This is the point where most people fail. They have moments of solitude, but they fill them with distractions, social media, noise, scrolling endlessly. They fear what silence might reveal. But you are still here. That means you are ready to step beyond fear. The first principle of mastery is ritual. Isolation without structure is wasted. Machiavelli, exiled, did not surrender to despair. He worked his land during the day, maintaining a semblance of normalcy, and at night he donned his formal robes and studied as if still at the center of power. The act wasn't about appearance. It was psychological armor, preserving identity against external chaos. You too must create rituals that honor your purpose. Write, train, study, or create consistently. Every hour spent this way compounds your independence, strengthens your mind, and sharpens your presence. The second principle is intellectual companionship. Physical solitude does not require intellectual starvation. Engage with minds greater than your own. Machiavelli, Marcus Aurelius, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche. Let their words confront you, provoke thought, and sharpen understanding. This is not social replacement. This is a higher order of connection, unbound by time, opinion, or circumstance. Build a deliberate mental circle of influence that no one can remove from you. Books, ideas, and philosophies become the mentors who guide your isolation toward brilliance. The third principle is documentation. Without feedback, it's easy to feel stagnant. Track your progress, record your thoughts, write daily, log training, or maintain a journal. Evidence of growth is a silent force. When you re-emerge into society, you bring results, not explanations. Results are undeniable. They are the proof that your time in solitude was not wasted. Your work in isolation becomes visible success when the world believes it has ignored you. The fourth principle is strategic re-emergence. Solitude is a phase, not a permanent retreat. When you reappear, do so not seeking validation, but offering value. Your presence will feel different. People will sense the weight of focus, the depth forged in silence. They may not articulate it, but they will recognize your authority. This is not manipulation. This is presence, shaped by experience, honed by conscious separation from distraction. Now let's dissect the psychological advantage you gain. Standing alone is a power multiplier. When you need nothing, everyone becomes aware of your sovereignty. Those who depend on the group, on social approval, or constant connection will recoil subtly. They will test boundaries, attempt control, but you are untouchable because your center is internal, not external. This is why societies pathologize solitude. A self-sufficient individual is unpredictable, ungovernable, and thus dangerous. History shows the pattern. Dante, exiled from Florence, converted loss into immortal creation. The Divine Comedy was not written from comfort. It was forged in exile, in silence, in darkness. Seneca, exiled under Nero, composed philosophy that would echo for 2,000 years. Thoreau, living alone at Walden Pond, discovered freedom in simplicity and created a philosophy that still challenges the modern mind. These men were not destroyed by isolation. They were sculpted by it. Next comes the alchemy of transmutation, converting loneliness into sovereignty. Many never attempt this. They fill the void with distraction. But the process is simple, though demanding. Step 1. Acknowledge your solitude, not as a curse, but as raw material. Step 2. Excavate the shadows within, fears, desires, rage, suppressed truths. Step 3. Integrate these discoveries into your conscious self. Step 4. construct deliberately from this foundation. This is how you turn the lead of loneliness into the gold of self-rule. The danger is fear-based hiding. Retreat born of panic or rejection produces weakness. The sovereign retreats strategically, purposefully, deliberately, silently. Machiavelli didn't flee in despair. He used exile to hone strategy. Your withdrawal must mirror this. Internal engagement, focus on work, growth, and mastery. This is the essence of strategic solitude. Anything less becomes performance, not liberation. Schopenhauer described solitude as intellectual wealth. Those who cultivate it possess a mind that entertains itself, fascinates itself, and thrives without constant external input. This terrifies those who cannot escape the herd. Your independence becomes a mirror for them, reflecting what they have never developed, a self-sufficient interior life. Your presence alone indicts their dependence, their distractions, their relentless need for validation. The crowd hates those who walk alone, not out of envy, but existential fear. Every moment you enjoy your own company challenges their assumptions. Skip the party. Avoid the gossip. Decline the approval-seeking game. They will pathologize, mock, and fear you. Let them. Their contempt is impotent against someone who has transcended the herd. The power of solitude lies not just in creation, but in the freedom to exist beyond their influence. This is what culture hides. Western society elevates extroversion, talkative, gregarious, social. The contemplative, the solitary, are deemed broken, incomplete, defective. Yet every revolutionary idea, every foundational work of philosophy, mathematics, and literature came from those who embraced the quiet. Einstein alone in a patent office created relativity. Wittgenstein in a Norwegian cabin reshaped language and logic. Emily Dickinson, mostly confined to her room, wrote poetry that still endures. Noise consumes, silence creates. Now let's talk about relationships. The ability to be alone transforms how you connect. When you're not desperate, not clinging, not seeking validation, your relationships shift. You stop accepting crumbs. You stop negotiating from weakness. You interact from wholeness, not hunger. This paradoxically attracts others. Presence becomes magnetic. Neediness repels. Self-sufficiency draws in. The Machiavellian strategic retreat applies here too. When you are losing leverage, socially, professionally, romantically, the amateur panics, chases, proves and diminishes their position. The wise withdraws. Less available, less visible, less eager. You reclaim your energy, gain perspective, and trigger scarcity. People only value what they perceive as limited, but only if your absence is authentic, not performative. Integration of the shadow, disciplined solitude, and strategic withdrawal builds the internal sovereignty few achieve. Most never reach this stage because they fear silence, fear the unknown parts of themselves, and fear being unobserved. But mastery requires embracing all of it, the darkness, the quiet, the discomfort. Your fortress is not a wall to hide behind. It is a laboratory to experiment, to observe, to forge strategy, and to develop self-rule. This is the psychological edge. The person who can be alone cannot be manipulated. They do not tolerate disrespect. They do not cling to approval. They are not hostage to alliances, friendships, or relationships built on need. They negotiate from completeness, not lack. And this, paradoxically, makes them more desirable, more magnetic, more influential than any social butterfly chained to the validation of others. Finally, we arrive at the culmination. the stage where solitude becomes not just a tool, but an identity. Thus is where the ordinary end and the sovereign begins. You have understood that isolation is not punishment, that silence is not emptiness, and that loneliness is not weakness. You have learned to structure your solitude, to confront your shadows, to integrate them, and to build a foundation strong enough to hold you regardless of external circumstances. Now comes the application, the art of living deliberately in a world that fears your independence. First, understand the distinction between exile and freedom. Dante, Thoreau, Seneca, they were exiled in society's eyes, yet they were free in reality. The crowd believes connection is the measure of life's value. They pathologize withdrawal. But you have discovered that freedom lies in self-sufficiency. Your solitude is sovereignty, your silence is insight, and your absence from the herd is presence. The lesson is simple. The world will never validate this for you. You must claim it for yourself. Second, weaponize your focus. All distractions, the constant notifications, the compulsive comparison, the endless chatter, are leeches on your attention. In solitude, attention becomes a weapon. Every hour dedicated to learning, creating, and growing compounds exponentially. Machiavelli wrote, "The prince, under threat, under exile, and under loss." What you do, in quiet, undisturbed, will outlast what the crowd produces in frantic social performance. Your work, your thoughts, your creations will speak louder than any opinion or approval. Third, master strategic engagement. Solitude is not permanent withdrawal. Like the monk returning from the mountain or the exile returning to court, you will re-enter society, but on your own terms. Your presence carries weight because it is informed by absence. People sense it. They cannot name it, but they feel the power. Every interaction becomes deliberate. You are no longer reactive. You are sovereign. This is the invisible authority that social conditioning cannot teach, and that those addicted to validation cannot comprehend. Fourth, cultivate presence. The strongest influence comes not from words, but from being. Presence is magnetic. It is the product of inner independence, confidence in your own thoughts, and the clarity gained from unbroken solitude. Self-sufficiency is gravity. Neediness is repulsion. The moment you embrace this, relationships change. You attract rather than chase. You influence rather than plead. You are no longer subject to manipulation because your value is internal, not borrowed from others' opinions. History reinforces this. Machiavelli, exiled and stripped of power, wrote strategies that endured for centuries. Dante turned exile into immortality. Seneca used banishment to teach Stoic wisdom across millennia. Thoreau's retreat into the woods redefined what it meant to live deliberately. Einstein created revolutionary physics in isolation. These men did not conform. They were forged in the silence that society fears, and so can you. But make no mistake, this path is not easy. It demands courage to face the parts of yourself you have long ignored. It requires discipline to avoid the seductive noise of distraction. It takes patience to allow growth, clarity, and mastery to form quietly beneath the surface. And above all, it requires defiance against the social pressure that insists you cannot thrive alone. Yet the rewards are unmatched. You do not just survive. You thrive. You create. You master. You become sovereign. Now consider this. Every time you feel the pang of loneliness, pause. Ask yourself, what if this is not my sentence, but my preparation? What if every moment alone is a step toward freedom, power and clarity that no social engagement could give you. The crowd cannot hear what the silence teaches. They're distracted, dependent, and fearful. You are here, learning a language of power they cannot comprehend. This is not arrogance, it is understanding. Finally, make your solitude purposeful. Structure it with rituals. Build intellectual companionship through books, study, and deliberate thought. Document your growth. Step back into society strategically. Let your presence, your independence, and your mastery speak louder than your words. This is the alchemy of loneliness, the transformation from a state feared by most into the source of strength, clarity, and influence that defines the few. Remember, the world will tell you that connection is everything, and isolation is death. It will mock you, pathologize you, and medicate your preference. Ignore it. You are being forged in a fire they cannot endure. What they see as emptiness is your laboratory. What they see as exile is your arena. What they see as punishment is your preparation. And when you emerge, you will not bend, break, or bow. You will stand, sovereign, in a way the crowd cannot even comprehend. So, as this video closes, carry this thought into every moment of quiet. The next time you are alone and the familiar ache rises, stop. Ask yourself, not in fear, but in curiosity, what is this teaching me? How is this moment building me? The crowd will never understand the forge of solitude, but you do. And that knowledge is your most unassailable power. If this resonates, if something inside recognized the truth you've been feeling all along, act on it. Begin the rituals. Embrace the excavation. Integrate the shadows. Construct your foundation. And step into sovereign solitude. Comment below. Share your thoughts, your insights, or even your struggles with being alone. Let's engage in the conversation the crowd fears to have. Share this video with anyone trapped by the noise of society, anyone struggling to find strength in their own company. Let them see that solitude is not punishment, it is power. Subscribe if you haven't already, and remember, this is just the surface. There are deeper layers, hidden strategies, and psychological truths waiting for those willing to go further. Those who do enter a realm the majority cannot perceive. Join, participate, and continue the journey. Not everyone will stay, and that's precisely the point. You now understand. Being alone is not the end. It is the beginning, and when you embrace it, you step into the very force the world fears, the independent, sovereign, unshakable self. Your solitude is your forge. Your silence is your weapon. Your loneliness is your preparation, and the world cannot touch the self you build within it.